Hello and thank you for joining me. I am Gregory and this is 1 in 20 D&D. Welcome to session 21 recap of the VÄRLDEN Reach, which is a 5e D&D campaign that I am one of the players in. I play the bard Captain Jermaine Santo, and this week we are going to talk about getting ready to go to Handle. I will kind of follow the same pattern I have for the last few videos. I think this works nicely. I'll do as quick as I can of a rundown of what happened in the session and then share my kind of reflections and reactions to what happened in the session. So, we started out with the previous session. We had wrapped up with this conversation with the leadership of the Vokter. We went to go downstairs to demonstrate Pyre's thunder cannon to our master at arms Crag, after determining that we would go to Handle to root out the corruption within the Temple of Ayuz in Handle, and also try to track down the missing Pyre's missing items, I guess the other guns that she created, and as well as her journal. Or some trinkets, I'm not sure. I think that's what we're looking for. I know we're looking for the journal and some other items. I don't think she's actually given us the specifics of what is actually missing. So, maybe that'll come up in the future. So, Lily decided she would, rather than go down for this demonstration, she would go straight off to talk with T, because she's a little pissed off. Why would T send her back to Handle, knowing how much she dreads going back to Handle? So she goes off to do that. We go down to do this demonstration for Crag. After the demonstration, to which he is pretty much horrified as well as impressed at the same time, and definitely think it's a priority that we make sure this technology or this weapon doesn't fall into the wrong hands. We then decide, hey, we should probably talk to Elder Turan, and see what information he can give us about this corruption in their church in Ayuz. So we go to join Lily and T. We kind of have a quick conversation between the party, T and Lily, and once that's over, we decide we're going to spend the rest of the day in Unity, kind of collecting ourselves, getting our things together, and then we'll go on to Handle the following morning. We leave the next morning, and on the first night, we're having this conversation because Marana feels like she needs to. She has this moment of sharing with the party, like, hey, I know that this guy Rodrigo, the head of the church in Handle, or the head of the Church of Ayuz in Handle, the Temple of Ayuz in Handle, is for sure is corrupt. And when we ask, like, how could she know that? She basically says, well, my parents are probably the two I believe that the two individuals Lily saw in her vision are my adopted parents, who are members of the tribunal and are in league with Rodrigo, and they're all freaking corrupt. That's, in a nutshell, that's kind of what she revealed to us. So after this, or either at the end of this conversation or shortly thereafter, after dinner that evening, there's this commotion kind of coming out of the forest. These goblins come tearing out of the woods, and at first we're like on guard, like thinking they're going to attack us, and then we quickly notice that they're running from something. The next thing that happens is this owlbear comes crashing out of the woods. Same thing, we're kind of like, okay, is this owlbear going to cause some trouble? It seems to be running from something. And two trolls come tearing out of the woods, see us, and engage the party. So we have some combat in which it was a little tricky because, trolls regenerate, so we had to deal with that for the first time. And Jermaine got pretty badly wounded in this combat. That he took the most damage. He was the meat shield in this session, I guess, or in this combat. We had some pretty fun combat, and good. It's neat to see some of the techniques and some of the fighting patterns that are starting to develop slowly, but they're starting, which is cool. I love that stuff, so I enjoyed that. we had Perdita was able to, again, this is just a technical thing. She was able to impose uh, disadvantage. She imposed her shield in there with her feet and such, and it was kind of neat. We got to see, get Lily got to throw some fireballs. We got to see Sparks in action. We got to see Pyre shooting her thunder cannon and the whole thing. So Jermaine got to use his new special magic arrow, which was kind of fun. So it was a cool combat. I think we all enjoyed that. After that was done, the rest of our trip to Handle was uneventful. We went through kind of Marana's guidance. We decided that our best course of action was to go to sort of the northern peninsula or northern side of town across the river, which is where the merchants and like the guild halls and the middle class sort of is, and probably the most comfortable and affordable place to stay would be, and sort of find a place to make a home base, to which we went to the Bearded Bugbear Inn or Tavern Inn, Bearded Bugbear Inn, I guess, and met with Bugsy, who, when we went to Fiska, again through Marana's kind of guidance and her contact with Mrs. D had suggested we meet Bugsy and see what information he might have. So we kind of started there, which was great. And then he suggested we talk to the bartender for the tavern right next to the headquarters of the Black Ravens, and come to find out the Black Ravens are out of, and especially Lyra, their leader, they're out of town. He did confirm that this is in fact the leader of the Black Ravens, that's probably the only, now that I'm realizing it, that's probably the only useful information we may have gotten out of all of our kind of starting to dig into some of these issues. And so that's where we kind of left things off, is like, we're sort of heading on our way back to the tavern, and like, what do we do now? What's our next step? So that's the what happened in this session. Now, the biggest, most important element of this session was the opening scene to me. We had, at the beginning of the session, Lily goes storming into the temple to talk with T. T, she's screaming at the top of her lungs, like, get out here, or whatever. Once he comes out, he seemed like ready for this. Once he comes out, she kind of like plops down on the floor, cross-legged, and just, she kind of has it out with him a little bit of like, why on earth are you sending me to Handle? Are you crazy? You want me to die? What are you doing? And so she has this moment with T, of conversation to try to start dealing with what's going on. And T is kind of trying to reassure her, like, Lily, it's been years since you were in Handle. No one will recognize you. You wear armor, and you have the authority of the Voctaire, and you're a totally different person than who you were when you left, and all of this kind of thing. So they have this conversation. When the party gets to the temple, again, Jermaine, in his way, he goes right into the head of things. He sees them talking, or he believes that, because Lily's kind of on the floor. Maybe we couldn't quite see her right away, but saw T having a conversation with apparently someone. So Jermaine, as politely as he can, goes over and kind of like interposes himself. I don't know if that's the right word. He joins the conversation as politely as he can. Perdita and Marana and Pyre kind of also come at that point with him and join in this conversation. Now, here's what I loved about this conversation. We had Tracy has this beautiful way of revealing elements of her backstory, of her character. She has Lily through her conversations, whether it's her conversations with her god Ayuz, whether it's her conversations with T, who is functionally, basically, she's having a role play dialogue with our DM Mark. Whether it's those conversations or whether it's conversations with the party members, she has this way of like revealing these elements of her backstory very easily through her conversation. And it's not forced. It's not it's not like I don't want to say it. There's no digging. There's no like you don't have to like go there. You don't have to like ask questions about stuff. You don't have to do that. It just naturally beautifully comes out. And I just really admire it. I think it's really neat and fun to see as a player. Now, the most important thing in this conversation, Perdita and Jermaine have kind of become like mom and dad in the party. We all, in our way, we see Lily having this moment of being she's hurting, she's suffering, she's like she was tortured, she was abused, she all this stuff happened when she was a child as a slave in this city, and she absolutely dreads going back there. And now Elder Tehran and the rest of us, we're trying to help reassure her that and I think Marana did kind of the best job of this, or TBQ as Marana did the best job of this, of saying like, hey, you didn't have these powers when you were a slave. You didn't have these powers when you lived in Handel. Let someone try to do something to you now, because even on your own, you could probably handle anything that's going to come at you. And even if it's something you can't handle, that's why you've got us here. That's kind of what happened in this conversation. It was really awesome and beautiful. Jermaine, I had this wonderful moment. I enjoyed it. I'm saying as a player, I enjoyed this moment. I had this inspiration to try to kind of mirror Lily. So she's sitting on the floor cross-legged having this conversation with T and the rest of us. Jermaine does the same thing. He sits down on the floor right next to her, and he's trying to make she's trying to like he's a very sincere person. He's trying to get her. He wants her to see the sincerity that he's trying to convey, but he couldn't quite make eye contact with her because she's kind of like hanging her head. She's kind of like she's vulnerable. She's vulnerable, and it was so beautifully portrayed and played out by Tracy. And so Jermaine is just sitting on the floor and like trying to say, hey, the theme of the conversation, which was really neat, was like trust. Like, do you trust us, Lily? Because we trust you. We trust you to have our back. We trust you to heal us. We trust you to protect us, and please trust us to protect you. And she's like, what? You trust me? What do you mean you trust me? Why is Perdita always watching me, keeping an eye on me? To which, of course, Perdita is like, well, because I care about you and I want to make sure you're okay. so it was really cool. There was this really neat dialogue. It was mostly between these four characters: Lily, Jermaine, Marana, and Perdita. Pyre kind of kept to the background and kind of kept quiet. She didn't feel like part of that conversation or something. It was really, in its own way, it was kind of beautiful, the way she kind of respectfully kept a little bit on the outside of the conversation. It was really cool. So it was this beautiful moment of like this heartfelt interaction, and here's this powerful gnome cleric who we all have are developing this respect for, and she's again this fiery, feisty powerhouse, even though in a little package, and yet here she is being totally vulnerable and afraid, probably terrified of returning to Handel. So it was cool. It was this really beautiful bonding moment again between the players. Between the characters, and it was awesome. It was so much fun to roleplay. Okay, so two other fun things that happened in this. That's really that scene. I think this scene was one of the most enjoyable, along with the scene with Jermaine and Marana way back when Jermaine kind of first realized that maybe he's has some kind of attraction to Marana or something. Along with that conversation, I think this is probably my second favorite conversation so far in the session, which and what was cool about it was the whole group. It wasn't a one-on-one, it was actually the whole group. So the other things that happened in the session are, first, while we were still in Unity, Pyre and Lily are kind of like chumming up a little bit, but I think actually Pyre was trying to kind of help Lily break out of the little funk that she was in, which was really cool. I love the kinship, the friendship that Pyre and Lily are developing. It's really fun and awesome to see that developing. So they're kind of like conspiring together of like how they're going to, like, Pyre wants to figure out how she can make room for Sparks in the unit house. So they're like talking about like, we need to blow out some walls in the basement or lower the floor, or so they're like trying to figure this out and like talking about that. And Perdita is in the unit house. Jermaine kind of shows his new magic item, his new special arrow to, he kind of reveals it to Marana and like, hey, look what I can do now. This is kind of cool. And I'm actually a little better with this thing than the regular bow. And so Jermaine kind of goes back in. Perdita's sitting reading her book quietly, kind of goes back in to sit down there. And then Lily and Pyre come upstairs and they're talking about blowing things up and breaking down walls and all this kind of stuff, to which Perdita's like, what are you talking about? So we follow the two of them outside because Pyre had decided that she would show Lily how her gun works. So Perdita kind of finally, just in frustration, goes back inside, and Pyre proceeds to give Lily this kind of quick, demonstration and instruction of like, this is how it works and this is how you use it. She does a couple shots to show her and then lets Lily take a shot, to which it kind of goes a little haywire, ends up like shooting through the house, like Perdita's in the kitchen preparing dinner and like nearly gets hit or something. And it was just this fun, awesome, funny moment. And there was this moment just before that too of Pyre shooting the target dummy out back, and like we have this like scene of like Marana kind of looking at this, watching the target dummy get blown to smithereens, and like, great, now I have to fix that again. And then Pyre using mending to actually just go ahead and repair the dummy through magic. And Jermaine seeing this and going, ooh, this looks like fun. And he kind of goes over and lets them take a couple shots, blow up the dummy, fix it, blow up the dummy, fix it. and then this wild shot through the house, standing poor Perdita's hairs on end or whatever, and freaking her out a little bit. And so Jermaine is just absolutely in stitches over the whole thing. So that was fun part of it. And possibly one of the most, the beginning scene was really the best part of this session. Another fun thing that happened, and was a little bit of a thread through the whole session, is that Marana made a few jokes. She actually cracked like 2 or 3 jokes with the rest of the characters. Which Jermaine has definitely taken note. Is this other side of like this lighter side of Marana, which is like, he is absolutely thrilled about to see this. And at the same time, it's like Marana in her conversation at dinner the first night on the road, where she kind of reveals some of her past and the fact that like she's been disowned by these adopted parents, but at the same time, they were her adopted parents, and by the way, they're members of the tribunal in Handel, and so some fun reveals about some backstory stuff, really cool stuff. Got to see a little bit lighter side of Marana, got to see this vulnerable side or the rest of us got to see this more vulnerable side of Lily, and what an awesome session all around. That it was a lot of fun, and yet our first injection into Handel has been it felt fruitless to me, to Gregory, while I'm playing. I'm like, man, we're not getting anywhere. But at the same time, at least we found out that Lyra is, in fact, the head of the Black Ravens, and she and a large contingent of her mercenaries have left town. So what's that about? So we got one little bit of information, but that's kind of about it. So it was a fun session, and now let's see what is going to happen next. We're going to have to go infiltrate this church and get this guy out of power and figure out what's been happening there, and still got to find Pyre stuff. So lots to look forward to. So, hey, thank you for stopping by. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your likes, comments, questions, any thoughts. It helps me build. It helps me improve what I'm doing. So thank you for sharing that with me. And thank you for stopping by. I hope I get to see you at a table someday. And keep rolling 20s.